On April 10th, all the ads at Beijing Airport were changed to show the word unification in large letters with two smaller lines below. Defend national sovereignty, maintain national unification. Recently, as the US-China trade war has quickly escalated, both sides have raised tariffs to 145% and 125% respectively. China's rapid tariff retaliation against the US has brought up a big question again. Will there be a war between China and the US? Will the Taiwan Strait conflict break out in 2025? With China's growing threats, what preparation has Taiwan's military made? Today, we'll share some analysis and thoughts on these topics. But before we do, we would like to invite you to subscribe. Your support is our greatest motivation and allows us to bring you more valuable content. Now, moving on. First, could the trade war lead to a war between China and the US? As the US-China trade war escalates, Xi Jinping faces major challenges. On one side, China's economy is heading into a recession again, leading to the collapse of many export-dependent companies which are the main pillars of the economically developed provinces in China's southeast coastal areas. This will likely lead to a spike in unemployment and increase the chances of social unrest. On the other hand, internal power struggles within the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, are heating up. To hold on to power, especially Xi Jinping's position, the CCP has started a new wave of anti-US propaganda. This fuels nationalist anger and shifts the blame for China's troubles onto the US. On April 10th, President Trump was asked during a White House press conference whether the trade war could lead to a war between the US and China. Trump responded saying, "The US has the strongest weapons in the world and no one knows what they are. They're far stronger than people imagine, and no country can come close to the US. People have no idea of the true strength of America." On April 10th, China's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning posted on X about the trade war with the US, saying, "Never back down." She also shared an old video of a 1953 speech by former Chinese Communist leader Mao Zedong, seemingly to challenge the US over the new tariffs. Let's take a look at what Mao said in that clip. How long will the war last? I think we don't need to decide. It was Truman before, now it's Eisenhower, or whoever becomes the next US president. Let them decide. If they want to keep fighting, we'll fight until the end, until we win. After Mao Ning posted this, some people commented on her post, reminding others that not long after that speech, Mao Zedong launched the Great Leap Forward, an attempt to surpass the West that ended up causing the Great Famine. Tens of millions of Chinese people suffered, died, and became Mao Zedong's victims. This tragic piece of history should serve as a wake-up call for today's Chinese citizens. On April 12th, veteran journalist Guo Juan said on his talk show Elite Forum that Beijing is now seriously preparing for war. There are reports saying that the Chinese military has started distributing the emblems and badges of different US military units, all the way down to the regimental level. Some local military offices in Chinese cities have also received them. The idea is to get Chinese troops familiar with US military symbols, a move many see as preparation for war. It's also said that Xi Jinping has issued internal documents saying that a war with the US is inevitable, calling it a final showdown between two systems. However, for now, the strategy is to fight and talk at the same time. All signs suggest that Beijing is seriously getting ready for war. A trade war is really about the market. Whoever has the bigger market and more money holds the advantage. Right now, the global economy has too much supply and not enough demand. It's a buyer's market. China, being the world's factory and seller, is in a weak position. But if war breaks out, all this extra production might actually become a strength. In wartime, shortages become common, so if global supplies run low, the country with the strongest manufacturing base, like China, could suddenly have the upper hand. Guo Juan also warned that if the Chinese Communist Party really does launch a war, Xi is almost likely to start it in the Taiwan Strait, and it could even lead to a world war. If China really decides to go to war, there are mainly two possible locations: the Taiwan Strait or the South China Sea. Between the two, Beijing might prefer to target Taiwan because a war in the South China Sea would be much harder to win. Why? Because it's further away from mainland China. China's Air Force and Navy might not be strong enough to cover such a large area, especially if the US is involved. In that case, China wouldn't have much of an upper hand. However, a South China Sea conflict would likely stay limited. The CCP could decide when to stop and keep the situation under control. A war over Taiwan, on the other hand, brings big political advantages. It could help Xi Jinping strengthen his power and authority within the party. Plus, Taiwan is right across the strait from the mainland, so China would have a much better handle on logistics and military action. But here's the catch: once a war starts in the Taiwan Strait, it might not stay small. It could quickly turn into a larger, more serious conflict, or even a world war. And once that happens, the CCP might no longer be the one in control or when or how it ends. The political risks are enormous. Could 2025 be the year a war over Taiwan breaks out? According to an article published on April 5th by a U.S. defense outlet called 1945, an anonymous intelligence source claims that China is planning to launch an attack on Taiwan in October 2025, aiming to take full control within 6 months. If this is true, it means the situation in the Taiwan Strait could shift from constant tension to real war. U.S. Indo-Pacific Commander Admiral Paparo has repeatedly warned that China's military drills look like rehearsals for a full invasion. In March alone, China's intrusions into Taiwan's air defense identification zone surged. On March 17th and 21st, 43 and 41 warplanes crossed the Taiwan Strait's median line, something that used to be rare. In total, China sent 311 military aircraft in March alone. China has also been flying more spy balloons over the island, up to 11 in one day. Since early April, there have been more than 10 sorties of Chinese military aircraft and multiple warships operating around Taiwan almost every day. Experts say that April and October are the most likely months for any attack because the sea conditions in the Taiwan Strait are calm, making it ideal for an amphibious landing. Taiwan's military always treats these 2 months as high-risk periods. As tensions in the Taiwan Strait continue to heat up, the U.S. military is sending several MQ-47 Poseidon high-altitude surveillance drones to Okinawa, Japan. This area is close to Japan's southwestern islands and just across from Taiwan. The move is part of a joint effort with Japan to counter China's recent military threats. The MQ-47 Poseidon, developed by Northrop Grumman, can fly at over 15,000 meters, stay airborne for more than 24 hours, and travel up to 13,700 kilometers. So what went wrong with China's most recent military drill? From April 1st to 2nd, the Chinese military carried out a rush joint exercise near Taiwan. The operation didn't even have a name until the next day when it was suddenly called Straight Thunder 2025A. And then, just like that, it was over. The whole thing wrapped up very quickly, and then even had to use some propaganda videos to fill it out. Some observers believe this sloppy execution may be due to internal chaos within the Chinese military. Ironically, a Chinese Communist Party regime that claims to follow strict materialism ended up releasing a weird fighting demons and evil spirits propaganda video to boost morale. Because the US and Philippines have stepped up their military cooperation, they basically strengthened control over the Bashi Channel. With land-based anti-ship missiles and Tomahawk cruise missiles in place, they could quickly shut down the channel if war ever broke out. During a recent military drill, China's Shandong aircraft carrier didn't use the Bashi Channel. Instead, it went through a narrow strait between the Philippine Islands to get from the South China Sea to the Western Pacific. This was likely an attempt to find a safer route. But those narrow passages require ships to slow down, which is okay in peacetime. The problem is, if a real conflict starts, the US and the Philippines could also block those narrow routes pretty easily, cutting off the Chinese Navy's access from the South China Sea to the Western Pacific. This shows a major weakness in China's naval strategy. It doesn't have many reliable routes to send its warships into the wider Pacific Ocean. One big problem with China's military exercises is that their aircraft carriers still can't really carry out proper airstrike missions. The Shandong carrier, for example, doesn't have the ability to launch attacks on land. Its J-15 fighter jets are mainly used to protect the fleet from other aircraft, not to attack ground targets. Also, China's Air Force has another issue. Its fighter jets don't have enough range to fly all the way around Taiwan's east side to protect bombers. So in this recent drill, the J-15s were used to escort H-6 bombers in a practice attack on Taiwan's eastern coastline. But the whole thing looked more like a show for political messaging than actual military training. Most jets flew toward the Taiwan Strait's center line, then quickly turned around. A few flew into northern Taiwan's airspace but were gone by the next day. If a real war broke out, the first step for China would be to gain control of the air above northern Taiwan. That would help them protect any landing ships heading straight for Taipei. They'd also need to control the skies in southwest Taiwan so they can safely bring in bombers and ships through the Bashi Channel and try to block US forces from getting involved. Ironically, the airspace right above the Taiwan Strait might not be as important. Both sides have packed that area with surface-to-air missiles, making it super dangerous. In an actual war, no pilot would fly straight across the middle line. They'd basically be flying into a trap. So, trying to create an air attack route through that area would be nearly impossible. How is Taiwan preparing for a potential threat from China? On March 24th, the Wall Street Journal published an article titled, "How China Might Prepare to Blockade Taiwan." The report said that US, Taiwanese, and independent military experts believe the Chinese military, PLA, may try to surround and isolate Taiwan in 5 main steps: launch an attack, set up a blockade, fill in any gaps, cut off access, and isolate Taiwan online. The article explained each step. Attack. The first move could be airstrikes on key infrastructure in Taiwan. Blockade. China could send warships to encircle Taiwan and even deploy aircraft carrier groups to intimidate or deter US and allied forces from helping. Fill in the gaps. The PLA might use Coast Guard vessels or civilian ships to help complete the blockade where warships can't reach. Cut off access. Submarines might lay underwater mines near Taiwan's main ports, and large civilian ships like cargo and cruise ships could be used to block port entrances. Internet isolation. China could drag anchors from cargo ships to cut Taiwan's more than 10 undersea fiber optic cables, while launching cyber attacks to further disrupt communications. To prepare for a possible threat from China, Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te recently led a tabletop military exercise. During the drill, they reviewed around a dozen different scenarios of how China might try to blockade or isolate the island. A well-known military blogger named Mark also said Taiwan is on high alert. The country has not only strengthened its defenses but has also made its yearly military drills longer and more intense to better prepare for a real conflict. Even though there's serious infighting inside the Chinese Communist Party and the recent military drills around Taiwan didn't seem realistic, Taiwan isn't taking any chances. This year, Taiwan extended the timeline for its major annual military drill, the Hong Kong Live Fire exercise. Right now, Taiwan's Ministry of National Defense is running a 14-day, 13-night, non-stop computer-based war game called Hong Kong 41. This simulation is based on scenarios like China using gray zone tactics or a full-scale attack by 2027. It also considers the possibility that China could suddenly turn a regular drill into a real strike. The actual live fire part of Hong Kong 41 is scheduled for July 9th to 18th. It'll involve all troops, full equipment, and some real ammunition. The drills are designed from a real combat perspective, led by commanders at all levels. They'll include joint operations by Taiwan's Army, Navy, and Air Force, both on the main island and offshore islands. The exercise will also be linked with Taiwan's 2025 urban resilience plans. This year's drill will last 10 days and 9 nights, the longest ever. Taiwan's military also plans to use the exercise to fully test its reserve mobilization system. One part of the drill will test the full activation of the Army's 206th Infantry Brigade. Over 20,000 reservists are expected to be called up this year, which is 6,000 more than last year's 14,000. These reservists will undergo 14 days of new, more intense training that includes pre-combat and battle skills, along with live-fire shooting exercises. Why is Xi Jinping choosing to fight the US to the end in the China-US trade war? According to Yuan Hongbing, a Chinese legal scholar living in Australia, Xi's tough stance mainly comes from 2 major fears. Yuan says he got his information from sources inside the Chinese government. He shared his analysis during an interview on the new Tang Dynasty TV program Elite Forum. First, Xi worries that if he backs down on the tariff war, the US might push harder to investigate China's role in the COVID-19 pandemic. He's especially afraid that he could be personally blamed and even accused of crimes against humanity. In this view, there's no way he can retreat. Second, Xi is also afraid of what might happen if the US looks deeper into the fentanyl crisis. During Trump's first term, Xi reportedly approved a secret plan to let fentanyl drugs flow into the US to cause social problems. If this plan is ever exposed, Xi fears he could be labeled as the world's biggest drug dealer. Because of this, a war with the US over Taiwan could happen. China knows it can't win a long-term economic battle, so it might try to change its fate through war. But this is extremely risky. If such a war breaks out, it could lead to Xi's fall from power and possibly the end of the Chinese Communist Party. That's all for today. If you enjoy our content, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe, leave a comment, and share it with a friend. We appreciate your support, and we'll see you next time.